I'm Denise Ide. I'm the president and founder of Logic of English. And I am passionate about telling people the great news that English is really actually much more regular than you think, and it's decodable if you know the right phonograms and the right spelling rules. That is what we are going to be talking about today. We are going to discover together how to decode the sight words. We are going to learn an accurate view of phonics and morphology that helps to explain these very important words. As we begin, I want to ask you a question. What is a sight word? Many of us think of sight words as non-decodable words, such as the word have. After all, this word looks like it says have, and therefore we think that they need to be taught as whole words by rote. So we can imagine that this gentleman is asking this boy, what does it say? And he's saying have, and the gentleman is saying, no, it says have, and they keep practicing these sight words over and over and over because they're exceptions in most people's minds. Today, I want to change your understanding of sight words, and I want to help you see that sight words really are high-frequency words. These are the most common words written in English, and they're very important to be able to read fluently or quickly, as if by sight. So in English, what do you think is the most common word? It is the. The is the most commonly used word in the whole English language. This is a list of the 10 most commonly used words in English. What's really interesting about this list is 25% of all written texts are these words. So you can imagine not being able to read or spell these words would be a real stumbling block. The first 25 words make up 33% of all written texts. And what's really fascinating about this list is, guess what? There's only one exception. But we'll get to that more later. The 100 most frequently used words comprise half of all written texts. That's right, half of everything that we read is these words. So being able to read and spell these words is very, very important. However, there are only a handful of exceptions, despite what many people think about these words. So today we're going to systematically teach how to read and spell each of these words so that you understand why. And then we also will look at the exceptions together. The list we're using today was comprised by the Oxford English Dictionary. So when you're looking at high-frequency word lists, it's important to ask yourself a question. What texts did they use to determine the high-frequency words? Well, the Oxford English Dictionary uses something called the Oxford English Corpus. This is a group of 21st century texts that includes journals, websites, novels, blogs, newspapers, because language changes over time. So this is a very current corpus of English literature. In addition, this corpus represents English how it's spoken worldwide. So that's why we're going to be using the Oxford English Dictionary high-frequency word list today. Now that said, high-frequency word lists have a lot of overlap. That's because most of the words are grammatical terms that you need to form a sentence in English. Many of you are familiar with the Dolch list. The Dolch list was comprised by Dr. Edward Dolch in the 1930s. He used children's literature and counted the words to determine the high-frequency words in children's literature in the 1930s. This list is comprised of 220 high-frequency words and 95 nouns, and it is organized by grade level, pre-K through third grade. What's interesting about a high-frequency word list, though, that I want you to consider is that these words are frequently used in children's literature. And so if you're not teaching how to read these words until third grade, your students are going to have some gaps in their ability to read children's literature. The Fry words were compiled in the 1950s and updated in the 1980s. The Fry list used texts that were found in grades 3 through 9, and there are 1,000 words in this list. The interesting thing again about these lists is there's a tremendous amount of overlap in them, especially in the first few hundred words, because most of these words are grammatical terms found in any sentence. Where they begin to diverge is further down the list. If you're using a newspaper or a website, you may have a different set of words than farther down the list than if you're using children's literature. Another commonly used word list in Australia is called the Oxford word list. And I find this one interesting because it's used in Australian schools and it's based on words that children most commonly write themselves in the first 3 grades. So it's looking at what words are children using and wanting to identify those so that children can be instructed in them for reading and writing purposes. So for this presentation, we're going to think of sight words as high frequency words. And I'm going to help unravel the exceptions for you so that you no longer think of sight words as the exception words that must be taught by rote. Now that said, I understand how many of you might feel about phonics. I had a teacher once tell me, I spend the first half of the year teaching phonics and the second half of the year unteaching phonics to explain all the exceptions. I've had other teachers say to me, I feel like I'm saying that's an exception all the time because English is just crazy. This is because many of us have learned and therefore we teach an incomplete phonics. And I want to be clear here, we cannot teach what we do not know. And so most of us have been presented with an incomplete phonics and therefore we teach an incomplete phonics. That's what I want to help change in the English speaking world. I want to help people understand how English really works. So what do I mean by incomplete phonics? Well, we learn A says as in apple and maybe A is in grapes. We learn that B says B is in butterfly and C says K is in carrot and D says D is in drum. We probably also learn a handful of digraphs like SH says sh, TH says f, and maybe some vowels. EA says E because when 2 vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. So we learn some phonics, and this phonics is very important because it helps many students learn to read, but it is still incomplete. I once went out and got a whole stack of level 1 readers because this is the beginning, right, of level 1 of where students begin reading independently. And I coded these readers. I sat down and I took a common phonics program and I thought, well, let's code how many exceptions there are to that program in this book. And what I found was there were 18 exceptions on the first page of Morris the Moose. So 18 times a teacher or a parent might be saying that's an exception or that's a sight word to a student who was reading Morris the Moose. So I thought, well, I know I need a decodable reader because this idea, decodable readers, right? Some readers are decodable, others are real books that you can read. So I took the fat cat sat on the mat and I thought, well, this looks like a decodable reader. And guess what? Once again, there were 18 exceptions on page 1. So then I began analyzing some of the Bob books and I thought, well, I'll take a level 1 Bob book called My School Trip because they're introducing some phonics concepts systematically through the Bob books. And this is what I found. I found, well, this is a little better. There are only 4 exceptions on the first page. But there's a catch. And here's the catch. There's only 1 sentence on page 1. So I got really curious and I began counting how many of the phonograms and spelling rules were in these various books. And in this book, My School Trip, there are 89 of the 104 tools or rules that are taught by Logic of English or that we know are commonly taught in Orton Gillingham. So keep in mind that if you don't have a complete understanding of phonics, or your students don't, they're going to have to be guessing. Instead, we want to teach them how English really works. And the reason is English is a really large language. There are 1 million words in English. And many phonics programs leave between 40 and 60% of the words as exceptions. So if we leave just on average half of the words as exceptions in English, that is 500,000 words. So sometimes we think of these lists like the Dolch list as the only high frequent or the only sight words that students need to learn. But if we don't teach an accurate code, we're leaving hundreds of thousands of additional words as not decodable. Okay, well, no one knows a whole million words, but let's think about a 5-year-old, because 5-year-olds are coming to kindergarten and they're beginning their journey in learning to read. An average 5-year-old knows 13,000 words. And if we stop and consider this, the goal, right, is to be able to teach the child how to read and how to write all the words in their vocabulary. And if our phonics is incomplete, this could leave as many as 6,500 exceptions just in a 5-year-old's vocabulary. Now, for context, that slide of flashword cards would be 5 feet 1 inches tall. Okay, that's overwhelming. So these 220 Dolch words, or these 1,000 Fry words, that's nothing compared to what a student would really needs to master to become fluent readers of all the words in their vocabulary. Also, research is really helpful for us in understanding something, because human memory is limited to approximately 2,000 sight sound symbols. What this means is many adults who are functionally illiterate and cannot read the newspaper know 2,000 sight words. They've tapped out their memory for sight sound symbols, yet they can't read and comprehend. And I think we all agree that the goal of reading is to read and to comprehend, to make meaning from the texts. But learning and mastering whole words is not sustainable. So today, I want to ask you to think about what would happen if in our instruction we eliminated exceptions. What would happen? I also want to frame this conversation today around the research of the National Reading Panel. So the National Reading Panel reviewed 100,000 studies about reading, and in that they discovered that there are 5 essential skills of reading: phonemic awareness, systematic phonics, fluency, vocabulary development, and reading comprehension. These are the 5 essential skills a student needs to learn to read. Today, we want to focus on these first 2, phonemic awareness and systematic phonics. We'll also discover how this builds into fluency. Vocabulary development and reading comprehension are topics that we're going to save for another time. If you want to learn more about the research, the current research that is surrounding the National Reading Panel work, I highly recommend the Reading League Journal, Volume 1, Issue 3, September and October 2020. This has a lot of current research that continues to support that there are 5 essential skills of reading. To begin, though, I want to talk about how some of these skills are foundational. So phonemic awareness is the foundational skill of reading. It is the understanding that words are comprised of sounds. So words are not just whole units of meaning. Each word is made up of a sound. And a sound is called a phoneme. So every word is made up of one or more phonemes or sounds combined and blended together. The phonemic awareness skills that most highly correlate with reading and writing are blending and segmenting. And so the ability to blend looks like this. I, the teacher or parent, would say something like this. I have a word that I'm going to segment or unglue, and I want you to blend it back together and choose the right picture on the screen. Or s. horse. K, ow, cow. Ish, fish. Ch, I, k, n. Chicken. Excellent. Notice when we are practicing blending words with students, we want to begin with one-syllable words, and then we want to add in consonant blends, and we want to add in multi-syllable words, because the ability to blend words together is foundational to reading, and practicing these skills without text is a great way to strengthen the skill of blending. Another skill that's really important is segmenting. So I've been segmenting the words like this: b, a, s, k, e, t, basket. And so once students are able to blend words, the ability to segment them is really key to the ability to spell words. And once again, be practicing these skills not only with one-syllable words, but with multi-syllable words. Now, fluency in phonemic awareness is the mastery of the skill of phonemic awareness. It is simply this: if I were to say ch, a, the student says chair. If they're not fluent in phonemic awareness, they might sound like this: chair, chair. And that's fine. They just need to practice the skill more, and then they will become fluent and they'll be able to blend very quickly and fluently. So that is a foundational skill that students need in order to be successful in systematic phonics. Systematic phonics, as I define it, is an accurate written code which translates sounds into a visual image. And I want to focus on that word, accurate. It is an accurate code. So I have a question for you. How many sounds are in English? Excuse me. There are 45 sounds in English. Now, many people are surprised by this. Oftentimes we think, well, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. Wow, there are a lot more sounds in English. And there are. So what we can take away from this is English is a language that is more complex. There is not a one-to-one correspondence between letters and sounds. In fact, there are 75 phonograms that represent those sounds and 31 spelling rules that help to explain further how the code works. When we know these tools, we are able to explain 98% of English words, and leaving 2% is more truly an exception. If you stop and think about it, having half of the words as exceptions, well, those aren't really exceptions then, are they? Knowing the phonograms and spelling rules, I like to say, are the critical thinking skills for language learning. And what's really fascinating about these skills is not only do they unlock English, they help us to become better second and third language learners as well. So let's go back and discuss phonograms. I don't teach students individual letters so much anymore as phonograms. I teach them that letters are pictures of sounds. They are pictures of sounds, and that's how we can think about them. It's also important to emphasize the sound of the letters or the sound of the phonograms, not the names. So often we begin instruction with this is a D, this is an O, this is a G. But DOG doesn't tell us anything about how to read the word dog. If we say, this is a picture of the sound D, this is a picture of the sounds ah, o, u, or the sound ah. This is a picture of the sound G. The students have everything they need then, combined with phonemic awareness skills, to blend D, ah, G, dog. Do you see how the phonemic awareness skill of blending comes in? All right, I also like to begin with lowercase letters. For some reason, we often begin instruction with uppercase. And maybe it's because as Americans, we often think bigger is better. But lowercase letters are found in more than 90% of all texts. We only use uppercase letters at the beginning of sentences and the beginning of proper nouns. So begin instruction with the lowercase letters because they'll unlock the English texts quicker. In addition, once you teach all the lowercase, you can go back and teach uppercase, and then you can teach their relationships. So I want to begin today with some foundational knowledge that most of us know. We're going to begin with the first sounds of A through Z. So once again, I'm assuming that you come to this presentation with the knowledge of the first sounds of A through Z. So let's just read the first sounds together. A, B, K, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, A, P, Qu. Now, this one might surprise you a little bit, but Q always needs a U in English, and so this is the phonogram Qu. It's not just the Q alone. Q always needs a U. It's always a multi-letter phonogram that says Qu. S, T, A, V, W, X, Y, Z. All right, great work. So this is the starting place of where we're going to begin with our knowledge of phonics. And something that's really interesting about just these first sounds are these are all of the high frequency words that are unlocked just by knowing these sounds. That is 16%. So I just want to point this out because even an incomplete phonics unlocks many of the high frequency words. So we need to be teaching students how to decode these words, not drilling them by sight. All right. However, what we just looked at is incomplete. So we talked about S says as in socks, and it really does. These are some of the first 100 fry words where S says s, it's, see, so first. But what happens in this very important word, his, s, z? Notice it's saying z. And many students, by the way, will misread this as hiss. What's happening in this word is, it's saying z. Some people will say it sounds like a Z. Well, that's because S says two sounds. It says S and Z. Look at how many of the first 100 fry words where S sounds like Z, is, was, as, his. Also, did you know in many plurals like words, chairs, S says Z? A linguist once told me that when we include the plurals, S says Z up to 50% of the time. Is that an exception? I don't think so. Instead, this is one of the key sounds of this phonogram, and we need to teach it to students as if this is one of the sounds. So we can teach this phonogram as saying S and Z. Okay, I have a theory, and I want to be clear, this is a Denise Ide theory. Why do some students read is just fine? Well, I think that when we teach that S says S, if you feel your throat as you say S and Z, you'll notice that Z, your voice box vibrates. And if you feel your mouth and the shape of your mouth when you say S and Z, you'll notice the shape of your mouth is exactly the same. So S and Z are what is considered a voiced and unvoiced pair. And I think for some students, the approximation is close enough. They don't even notice that S and Z are different. But for many students, especially those who are really detail-oriented or math and science oriented, they go, that doesn't say is, or that says is. S and Z are different sounds. So that's my theory that's why some students just seem to roll past it. They don't really notice it, but the students who are highly attuned to the language will misread is as is over and over and over. So the key here is to teach this as S and Z. Now, when we just teach that one additional sound, we now have 18% of the 100 most frequently used words. combined with the first sounds of A through Z. All right, let's look at a few of the additional single letter phonograms and their additional sounds. Most of us learned that C says k as in cat. But what does it say in place, sentence, face, since, etc.? It says s. And when is it saying s? Before an E. And what is it saying in city, decided, circle, and exercise? It's saying s. And where is it saying s? Before an I. And what does it say in cylinder, cycle, cypress, and spicy? It's saying s. And where is it saying s? Before a Y. That's because C always softens to s when followed by an E, I, or Y. And what does it say before an A, O, or U as in canned, cold, or cut? K. What does it say before a consonant as in close, cried, or object at the end of the word? K. Oh, sorry, what does it say at the end of the word as in arc, music, and comic? K. So C always softens to s when followed by an E, I, or Y. Otherwise, C says k. So this explains some very important things in English. Many people will say, well, English is crazy. Look, the C is saying two sounds in circus. But why is it saying s at the beginning of the word? It's before an I. And why in the middle of the word is it saying k? It's before a U. This rule alone explains more than 6,000 words in English where C softens to s. And it explains more than 10,000 words where C says k. So teaching that C says two sounds, k and s, unlocks more than 16,000 words. This is very important information to being able to decode in English. Now, this goes beyond the scope of our goal of learning to read all the high-frequency words, but I put this in the presentation because many times people say, well, I learned to read just fine and I spell just fine, but why do I need to know this? Or why do students need to know this? So I want to show you how understanding English words is important to all students. So we have the word picnic and we're adding the vowel suffix ing to make picnicking. But why do we add a K? What would this say? It would say picnicing because C always softens to s when followed by an E, I, or Y. And so we need to add a K so it says picnicking as we actually say it. How about this word? We have the word garlic. Why do we add a K to make garlicky? What would this say? You've got it. It would say garlicy. Now, C always softens to s when followed by an E, I, or Y, and when we know this rule, we can understand why we add a K. One of the things I love to do when I'm in rooms with lots of educators is I like to ask them, how many of you in this room are strong spellers? And people raise their hands, and it's usually, maybe a quarter of the room or less. And then I say, well, keep your hands up, those of you who are strong spellers. If you're a strong speller, do you spell because you think you know it just the word looks right? And people are nodding if they're strong spellers. Yep, it looks right. And then I'll say, okay, look at this word garlicky. Does that look funny to you? And people are like, yes, it does. I'm not sure about that K. Is that right or not? Well, here's the thing. When we know the phonograms and spelling rules, we know why. We don't have to rely on some intuition to know if it's right or not. We actually know that we add a K to keep it from saying garlicy. All right, this phonogram also says two sounds. Most of us learned that it says G as in goat. But what does it say in gem, gentle, and large? It says J, once again before an E. What does it say in giant, region, and gibberish? J before an I. What does it say in gym, biology, and spongy? J before a Y. But what does it say in get, gift, and foggy? It says G. Okay, many of you are thinking, see, English really is crazy. But the principle here is that we need to teach accurate spelling rules. Notice C always softens to S. However, G may soften to J when followed by an E, I, or Y. So our spelling rules need to be accurate and reflect what actually happens. And then you're going to probably be wondering, well, what good is that? Well, what does G always say before an A over U is in gap, got, and gum? G. What does it always say before a consonant is in glad, grand, and wiggle? G. What does it always say at the end of the word as in egg, peg, and log? G. So G may soften to J when followed by an E, I, or Y. Otherwise, G says G. So what are the two sounds of this phonogram that we should teach right from the beginning? G and J. What does this say? It says qu, and we've talked about how Q always needs a U in English. It also has a second sound, qu and k. This says x and z. So once again, what happens with the fact that we only have 26 letters, but we have 45 sounds? Well, in English, our phonograms or sound pictures can be written with one letter as in t, two letters as in sh, three letters as in I, or four letters as in A. A phonogram or a sound picture in English may be written with 1, 2, 3, or 4 letters. That's a really important concept. And when we teach the multi-letter phonograms, we need to teach all of the sounds, just like when we're teaching single-letter phonograms. Many of us have learned that TH says f as in sloth, and so it does. In the first 100 fry words, it says f in one word, with. Wow, what is it saying in all of these words, which are also in the first 100 fry words? It's saying v. Notice, f, v. It says two sounds. Let's say these together. F, v. The difference between these sounds is once again they're a voiced and unvoiced pair. Our lips and our teeth are in the same exact place as we say f, v. But our voice box is off for f and on for v. Notice it says the voice sound v in the, that, they, this, there, then. Wow! Now I'm hoping you're beginning to see why it's so important to teach all of the sounds to the phonograms. What does this say? It says f and v. All right, most of you will know this phonogram. What we're going to do is we're going to learn a group of multi-letter phonograms in rapid fire. I want to give you some familiarity with the phonograms that explain the 100 most frequently used words in English. And as we do this, I understand you're drinking from a fire hose, but we'll practice them a few times in this session. And you could always come back to these sections and practice them with the video. So this says E, and I'll give you a time to say the sound after me. E, E. I like to call this E-double-E. Go ahead, E-double-E. Er. In English, there's more than one way to say so when I teach this to students, I usually attach a word to it. So to be able to clarify when we're spelling which to use. I like to call this the of her. Go ahead and say that with me. The of her. This one I like to call the of first. Let's say that together. The of first. R. N. Ow, o. K. Sh. Oo, o. That's right, it says 3 sounds. I'll say them again. Oo, o. Or. Oo, you. Or you could say w. Ch, k, sh. That's right, it says 3 sounds. Ch, k, sh. A really fun way to teach this one, by the way, is to teach it like a train. Ch, k, sh, ch, k, sh. Just a fun tip for you. All right, I like to show this phonogram as an example as we wrap up learning a few multi-letter phonograms, is to once again just hit home, why is this so important? So CH says ch as in each and which and much, these fry words. But what does it say in the word school or orchid or chemistry or chasm? It says k. And what does it say in machine, chef, shoot, and Chicago? It says sh. So how does this fit with understanding the logic of the English language? Well, have you ever watched the Scripps Spelling Bee? What clue do the students get to ask the moderator? They get to ask the moderator for the origin of the word. And when they ask for the origin and they hear the sound k is in the word, what language are these all from? These are all from Greek. So if they hear that the word is from Greek and they hear the sound k, they know it's spelled like this. They're not rotely memorizing those spellings. They're understanding something about how English works and the history of the language. And if they hear the sound sh, what do you think the origin is of all of these words? Machine, chef, shoot, and Chicago. They're all from French. This is the French spelling of the sh sound. So these are all French loanwords to English. All right, if we have learned, we now are able to explain with the knowledge we've learned up to this point in the presentation, all of these high frequency words. These are all decodable. That is 40%. And all we've learned are the first sounds of A through Z, that S says S and Z, and 14 multi-letter phonograms. That's the only concepts you need to explain these words. I also taught you some of the additional sounds of the consonants, the single letter consonants. That was bonus material. All right, I like to use a technique called spelling analysis. And I use spelling analysis to teach students to read as well as to spell. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take out a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and I'd like you to just set it aside on your desk. And for now, I want us to listen to the word, and then we're going to segment it, and then I'll tell you when to write it. The first word is quilt. I have a quilt on my bed. Go ahead and say the word quilt. Now let's segment the word quilt. We'll segment the word quilt together. Qua, I, o, t. Now, when I segment quilt with the students, I often hold up fingers. Qua, I, o, t. Hopefully you can see that in the little tiny video. But I've put it in tiles here, and you'll notice I hold up 2 fingers for the qua. Why is that? Or why is the tile bigger? Because QU is a multi-letter phonogram that says qua, so I'm signaling to the students that it's spelled with 2 letters. All right, now that we've segmented the word out loud, and I've given them some hints about the spelling of the word, I want you, as the student, to write the word, sounding it out as you write it. Excellent. Now I want you to sound out the word again as I write it. Sound it out loud. Qua, I, o, t. Now let's read the word. Qua, I, o, t. Quilt. Now, the next step we do in spelling analysis is to ask ourselves, are there any multi-letter phonograms in this word? And there is, and we'll underline it. This trains our eyes to see this as a phonogram working together to say the sound qua, qua, I, o, t, quilt. All right, do you see how this is taking the phonemic awareness skills of blending and segmenting and the knowledge of the phonograms that we've taught and now combining them to be able to read and spell words? Let's try another one. Set down your pencil and paper again. The next word is street. I drove down the street. Go ahead and say street. Let's sound it out together. Be sounding it out loud with me, even if you feel silly saying it out loud by yourself. S, t, e. Use an E-double-E. Notice I'll give students hints as to which spelling to use if there's clarification needed. Go ahead and write the word street, sounding it out as you write it. Now let's write it together. S, t, e, t. And how will we mark it? You're right, we'll underline the E-double-E because those letters are working together to say E. Let's sound it out. S, t, e, t, street. Let's try the word farmer. The farmer is in the field. Okay, we can count the syllables in farmer by humming it. 2 syllables. When we have more than one syllable in the word, I will say something like this. Say to spell farm-er. What will we say to spell? Farm-er. Notice I give the students the syllable breaks. Let's sound out the first syllable, farm. R, Let's sound out the second syllable, Use the of her. Go ahead and write farmer and leave a little space between the syllables. Syllables are very important in English. Excellent. Now help me to write it. R, And how will we mark it? We'll underline the R and the Let's read it. Farmer. Great work. All right, let's talk about spelling rules. Spelling rules, once again, should be accurate. Many of us have learned, and therefore we've taught, when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. So we see words like each and near and years, and we think, well, that's the rule that explains this. But what about red, head, measure, heavy? Notice EA is saying in these words. What is it saying in great, wear, and break? It's saying A. This says E-A. Let's say that together. E-A. Once again, let's teach all the sounds to the phonograms right from the beginning. Doing so will eliminate unnecessary exceptions. And let's not teach rules that don't reflect how English really works. All right, I'm going to teach you a rule today that is super helpful. English words do not end in I, U, V, or J. Let's say it together. English words do not end in I, U, V, or J. I want to emphasize this part, English words. All right, this rule helps explain many different things in English. Let's look at this phonogram. What does it say? It says A. And what does this say? A. Notice we have 2 spellings of A in English. Which one may we use at the end of English words? We can use AY. So if we hear the word play or say, we know it's spelled like this. Let's learn another rule. This rule isn't as necessary for being able to decode words. However, it's very helpful to understand for being able to spell words. We often double F, L, and S after a single short or broad vowel at the end of a base word. Occasionally, other letters are also doubled. Let's read it together again. We often double F, L, and S after a single short or broad vowel at the end of a base word. Occasionally, other letters are also doubled. We are going to focus right now on short vowels. Broad vowels will come up later in the presentation when we dig more deeply into how vowels work in English. For now, it's helpful to know that the short vowels are the first sounds or the first vowel sounds of the single letter vowels. Let's read them together. A, I, A, I. All right, so we have a group of phonograms, and I want to practice reading them together before we begin to apply our spelling rules again. So I've just mixed up all the phonograms we've learned. Let's read them as practice. This will help you as teachers develop some level of mastery with these concepts. So this is A, 2-letter A that you may not use at the end of English words. U, U. K, S. the of her. V, g, j. E, double E. The of first. N, s, z. Ow, o. K, w. R, sh, qua, k. U, o. Or, ch, k, sh. E, a. A, two-letter A that you may use at the end of English words. All right, let's utilize what we've been learning in spelling analysis. So the bell is on the front desk. Go ahead and say the word bell. And let's sound it out together. B, e, l, l. And when I'm cueing students or helping them, I'll just tell them that there's another l in it. Go ahead and write bell, sounding it out as you write it. And now help me to write it. B, e, l, l. Now, how will we mark bell? Well, we don't have any multi-letter phonograms. However, we can talk about something. Why did we double the L's? We doubled the L after the single short vowel, e. We can read it, b, e, l, bell. The next word is sense. How many cents is this? Let's sound it out together. Sense. S. Use a k, s. E, n, t, s. Use a s, z. Did you notice how I cued the student which form of s to use? Go ahead and write sense and sound it out as you're writing it. Let's sound it out together. S, e, n, t, s. All right, how will we mark this one? When a phonogram says more than one sound, we can put a 2 over it. So the C is saying s. Why is it saying s in this word? Well, C always softens to s when followed by an E, I, or Y. Also, so then we can read the word s, e, n, t, s, sense. The next word is explain. Please explain the graph to me. Explain. Go ahead and say explain. And how many syllables? 2. Remember, we can hum a word to count the number of syllables. Let's sound out, we will say to spell X, plain. What will we say to spell? X, plain. Let's sound it out together. X. The second syllable is plain. P, l, a. Use two-letter A that you may not use at the end of English words. N. Go ahead and write X, plain, sounding it out as you write it. And help me to write it. X, l, a, n. And how will we mark it? We'll underline the A. Let's read it. X, p, l, a, n. Explain. Great work. All right, using the rules and phonograms that we've learned to this point, look how many of the 100 most frequently used words you can decode. These are completely regular. This is 46%. Something else I want you to ponder is imagine how many tens of thousands of additional words students can decode with just this information. This is key to understanding how English really works. And to help you understand how important this information is to others, I would like you to tell you the story of Allie. So when Uncovering the Logic of English first came out, I gave my friend Katie a copy of it. And Katie got on an airplane and she sat next to Allie. And Allie told Katie her story. She was explaining to Katie that she can't read. In fact, she struggled with reading so much that she needed her children to read recipes to her. And so she is a functionally illiterate adult. And Katie had a copy of Uncovering the Logic of English, which explains all the phonograms and spelling rules in it, in her purse. And so she gave a copy to Allie. And Katie gets off the airplane and she gives me a call while she's like walking through the airport and is telling me about this conversation. And she's like, and I'm so excited, I gave her a copy of your book. And in my mind, I was just in my heart, I was heartbroken. I was thinking, Katie, you just gave someone who's functionally illiterate a book. Well, the amazing thing about this story is that Allie took the book and she took the charts and she taught herself the phonograms. And she then used her knowledge of the phonograms to read about the spelling rules. And she later, and a few months later, contacts us and says she has read her first Nicholas Sparks novel. And a few months after that, she contacted us and said, I have discovered that I love to read political science books. So the reason I tell you Allie's story is learning the phonograms and spelling rules is life transforming to people who have struggled with reading. And that makes sense because if you have approached reading as memorizing whole words and now and we're not successful, these tools unlock how to decode the words. They open up the whole language.